On a peaceful afternoon at Jetavana Monastery, bird songs echoed from the lush green canopies. The Buddha, with compassionate eyes and a gentle smile, sat among his disciples. The atmosphere was filled with reverence and anticipation as he began to tell a story of kindness and sacrifice. This story was not merely a moral lesson, but a vivid testament to the boundless love that the Buddha had for those close to him. The bhikkhus, with focused minds and bright eyes, listened intently to every word of the master, feeling a deep connection between past and present. When the bhikkhus expressed their admiration for the Buddha's noble actions towards his relatives, he smiled softly, his eyes seeming to look through time. With a deep and powerful voice, he said, "O bhikkhus, this is not the first time the Tathagata has performed good deeds for his relatives." His words were like an opening door, transporting everyone back to a tale from the distant past, a story of selflessness and supreme sacrifice. The story of King Mahakapi. Long ago, when King Brahmadatta ruled the kingdom of Benares, a noble soul, the Bodhisattva, chose to be reborn as a monkey. As he grew, the Bodhisattva became an extraordinary monkey with a majestic build, extraordinary strength, and supreme wisdom. He became the respected king of a massive troop of 80,000 monkeys, living together in the majestic mountains of the Himalayas. By the banks of the legendary Ganges River, an ancient mango tree, though some say it was a banyan, stood tall. Its lush canopy spread out like a giant umbrella, sheltering all creatures. Ripe mangoes hung from its branches, as large as water pots, exuding a fragrant aroma and containing the pure sweetness of nature. When the wind blew, the ripe fruits fell. Some landed on the ground, some rolled into the swift-flowing Ganges, and others rested peacefully beneath the old tree. One day, while enjoying delicious mangoes with his troop, the Bodhisattva had an ominous premonition. He pondered deeply. These mangoes falling into the water could bring disaster upon us. With wisdom and foresight, he decided to act immediately to protect his troop. Without hesitation, the Bodhisattva ordered the monkeys to eat or remove all the mangoes from the branches extending over the river. He was so cautious that he even demanded they remove newly sprouted buds as small as peas. This precaution demonstrated his far-sightedness and deep concern for the safety of the entire troop. However, fate sometimes mocks even the most careful plans. A ripe mango, carefully hidden in an ant's nest on a branch, had escaped the keen eyes of the 80,000 monkeys. When this mango fell, it rolled into the swiftly flowing Ganges and got caught in a fishing net. At that very moment, the king of Benares was frolicking in the cool waters, with two nets spread upstream and downstream for safety. As twilight fell, the king prepared to end an enjoyable day of play. Just then, the fishermen pulled up their nets and unexpectedly discovered the strange fruit. They couldn't recognize what kind of fruit it was, but knew it must be a precious gift for the king. With reverence, they presented the fruit to the king. The king looked at the strange fruit with curious eyes, his gaze brightening with interest. He held the fruit in his hand, gently turning it to observe more closely. The faint aroma from the fruit made the king even more curious. With an excited voice, he asked, "What kind of fruit is this?" The fishermen knelt down, bowing their heads respectfully. They trembled before the king's presence, but tried to answer clearly. "Your Majesty, we truly do not know. This is the first time we have seen such a fruit." The king pondered, his brows furrowing in thought. He stroked his beard, his eyes seeming to look far away. After a moment of silence, he asked again, his voice calm but full of authority, "Then who might know what kind of fruit this is?" One of the fishermen, perhaps the oldest, boldly stepped forward. He knelt down but raised his head to look at the king, his eyes sparkling with the wisdom of age. With a slow and respectful voice, he replied, "Your Majesty, perhaps the foresters would know. They spend their lives in the forest, familiar with all kinds of plants. If anyone knows, it would surely be them." The king nodded approvingly at the intelligent answer. He clapped his hands, and immediately the courtiers around him began to move. "Summon the foresters at once," the king ordered, his voice echoing throughout the space. In no time, the foresters were present before the king. They bowed their heads respectfully, waiting for the king's question. When asked, they carefully observed the fruit, and with faces lighting up in recognition, they confirmed, "Your Majesty, This is indeed a mango." Hearing this, the king became even more intrigued. He took out a sharp silver knife from his belt and carefully cut the mango into thin slices. A fragrant aroma wafted out, causing everyone around to inhale deeply. The king gestured for the foresters to taste it first, to ensure its safety. When he saw them enjoying the sweetness of the fruit without any issues, the king finally brought a small piece to his lips. The moment the ripe mango's flavor spread in his mouth, the king felt transported to a new world. The sweet taste, blended with a hint of tartness, created an exquisite flavor he had never experienced before. A refreshing sensation spread from the tip of his tongue down his throat, then seemed to permeate his entire body. The king's eyes closed in pleasure, and a satisfied smile appeared on his lips. Completely enchanted by this magnificent flavor, the king turned to the foresters, his voice full of excitement. "Tell me, where does this wonderful mango tree grow?" The foresters bowed their heads and replied, "Your Majesty, according to our knowledge, this type of mango only grows on the riverbank towards the Himalayas, where the climate is special and the soil is fertile." Hearing this, the king's eyes lit up with determination. Without hesitation, he ordered, "Join the rafts immediately. We shall row upstream following the forester's guidance. I must find this miraculous mango tree." As soon as the king's order was given, the entire group set to work with extraordinary enthusiasm. No one could say exactly how long the journey lasted. Perhaps a few days, perhaps a week. Time seemed to pass unnoticed, as everyone looked forward with a longing to see the legendary mango tree. They overcame rapids and faced big waves and strong winds, but no one showed any sign of discouragement. Finally, as the sun was slowly setting behind distant mountain peaks, they arrived. The atmosphere suddenly became strangely quiet. The group of foresters, with eyes bright with excitement, pointed ahead and exclaimed, "Your Majesty, this is the mango tree." Before their eyes, an ancient mango tree stood proudly by the riverbank. Its trunk was massive, its bark rough as if telling the story of hundreds of years gone by. The lush canopy spread cool shade, and on its branches, countless ripe mangoes swayed in the evening breeze. The king ordered the rafts to stop. With an excited expression, he and his large entourage went ashore. The air was filled with joy and anticipation. He ordered seats to be spread under the tree, then lay down to rest after enjoying various delicious mangoes. The sweet taste of mangoes lingered on his tongue, making the king feel satisfied and happy. As night fell, soldiers carefully guarded the surroundings and lit bright fires. The flickering flames cast mysterious shadows on the old mango tree's trunk. The babbling sound of the river blended with the chirping of insects, creating a melodious natural symphony. Gradually, everyone fell asleep, unaware that a new adventure was about to begin. When the night was deep, the Bodhisattva, the wise monkey king, led his troop to the mango tree. The darkness sheltered them, and the soft footsteps of the monkeys blended with the sound of wind blowing through the leaves. With skill and agility, they began to enjoy their night feast, unaware that their fate was about to change forever. The night was late, but the ancient mango tree by the Ganges River was still not quiet. 80,000 monkeys, with the agility and dexterity characteristic of their species, were swiftly moving from branch to branch. The rustling of leaves, the thudding of falling fruit, mingled with the soft cheers of the monkey troop, creating a nocturnal forest symphony. Suddenly, a loud noise rang out from beneath the tree. The king, who had been in deep sleep after the long journey, startled awake. His eyes widened in astonishment at the sight before him. Thousands of small dark shapes moving on the tree branches under the silver moonlight. Anger flared up in the king's heart when he realized it was monkeys, stealing his precious mangoes. Without hesitation, the king quickly stood up, his robe still clinging to his sleepy form. His voice rang out, sharp and full of authority. "Guards, archers, everyone wake up!" In the blink of an eye, the entire entourage was fully awake, standing at attention before the king. Their eyes were full of concern, not knowing what had happened to make the king wake them in the middle of the night. The king pointed at the mango tree, his voice full of anger. "Look there, thieving monkeys! They are stealing my precious mangoes!" Then he turned to the archers, his eyes blazing. "I order you to surround those mango-stealing monkeys. Don't let a single one escape. Shoot them all. Tomorrow, I want to enjoy a feast of mangoes with monkey meat." As soon as the king's order was given, the archers knelt down, bowing their heads low. They responded in unison, their voices full of determination. "Your Majesty, we obey." Then, like a gust of wind, they quickly dispersed, surrounding the mango tree. The sound of bowstrings being drawn and arrows readied created an atmosphere of unbearable tension. Up in the tree, the monkeys who had been playing happily suddenly realized their dangerous situation. They were terrified, their eyes wide open, looking around for an escape route, but all paths were blocked, leaving no way out. In their desperation, they ran to the Bodhisattva, the wise and compassionate Monkey King. "Your Majesty," they cried out, their voices trembling, "the archers have surrounded the tree, and they say they will shoot us dead, us thieves. What should we do? We are so scared that our whole bodies are shaking." The Bodhisattva looked at his troop of monkeys, his heart overflowing with love and compassion. Despite the dire situation, he maintained his composure, his eyes radiating confidence and determination. With a calm and reassuring voice, he comforted the monkeys. "Do not fear, my beloved ones. I will save your lives. Trust in me." No sooner had he finished speaking than the Bodhisattva sprang into action. With extraordinary agility, he climbed up a straight branch, then moved to another branch that extended towards the Ganges River. His eyes focused, assessing the distance and calculating each step. Then, in a breathtaking moment, he leaped, his magnificent body soaring through the air like an arrow, crossing a distance of 100 bow lengths, and landing on a bush on the opposite bank of the river. Once safely on the ground, the Bodhisattva wasted no time. He quickly marked the distance, muttering to himself, "This is the distance I have crossed." Then, with remarkable skill, he cut a bamboo shoot at its base, stripped its bark, and said, "This part will be tied to that tree, while the other part will be in the air." However, in calculating the two lengths, he overlooked one small detail, the part of the bamboo that would be tied to his own waist. Without wasting any more time, the Bodhisattva quickly tied one end of the bamboo shoot to the tree on the bank of the Ganges, and the other end to his own waist. Then, with a deep breath, he concentrated all his strength and leaped. His large body shot through the air at an incredible speed, like a cloud swept along by a strong wind. But then, something unexpected happened. Because he hadn't accounted for the part of the bamboo tied to his body, the Bodhisattva couldn't reach all the way to the mango tree. He hung suspended in midair, just a short distance from the mango tree. Without hesitation, he stretched out his arms and grasped the nearest branch firmly. Hanging in midair, the Bodhisattva turned back to look at the trembling monkeys in the tree. With a voice full of determination and love, he called out loudly, "Good luck to you. Come quickly, my beloved ones. Step on my back and walk along the bamboo. Don't be afraid. I will be the bridge that takes you safely to the other shore." 80,000 monkeys, their hearts pounding with newfound freedom, climbed one by one over the Bodhisattva's magnificent body. The rustling of leaves blended with the panting breaths of the monkey troop, creating a symphony of life and sacrifice. When the last monkey safely set foot on the other shore, the entire troop turned back, their eyes brimming with tears as they looked at their savior. In a solemn moment, they all bowed their heads, paying homage to the Bodhisattva with deep gratitude, before silently disappearing into the deep forest. But among these pure souls, a dark shadow was lurking silently. It was Devadatta, a monkey with a dark heart and a soul full of jealousy. When the other monkeys left, he lingered behind, his eyes glinting with an evil look. In his mind, a dark thought arose. This is the opportunity for me to take revenge, to take the life of the one I hate the most. With the agility of a monkey, Devadatta climbed to the highest branch of the tree. From there, he aimed straight at the Bodhisattva's back, which was stretched out like a living bridge. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, with a powerful and cruel leap, he launched himself down. His heavy body slammed into the Bodhisattva's back, creating a terrifying sound that echoed throughout the forest. The pain tore through the Bodhisattva's entire body. He felt as if every fiber, every blood vessel in his body was bursting. His heart, once full of love and selflessness, now seemed shattered not only by physical pain, but also by the mental anguish of realizing that the one who caused this was one of the beings he had sacrificed himself to save. Nevertheless, his eyes still shone with a look of compassion, forgiving even the one who had caused this ultimate suffering. Devadatta, having completed his cruel act, showed no remorse. He quickly disappeared into the deep forest, leaving the bodhisattva alone to endure the pain and loneliness. The wind whistling through the treetops sounded like a lament for the tragic fate of the noble hero. Meanwhile, the king had awakened. The light of the waning moon illuminated the scene before him, leaving him astonished and moved. The king witnessed the entire process of the bodhisattva sacrificing himself to save the monkey troop, from the moment he leaped across the river to becoming a living bridge. The king's heart tightened at this noble act of sacrifice. He lay down, his eyes never leaving the image of the bodhisattva, and pondered. This creature, no, this hero, disregarded his own life to save the entire troop. What a noble example of selflessness and leadership. As the first light of dawn broke, shining upon the bodhisattva's pain-racked form, the king made a decision. Filled with admiration and respect, he said to himself, "I cannot let this hero die. Killing this noble monkey king would be an unforgivable crime. I must save him and care for him." With this resolve, the king ordered his soldiers to prepare a large raft and lower it into the swirling Ganges River. At the same time, he directed the construction of a temporary bridge, tall and sturdy, so that the bodhisattva could safely jump down. When everything was ready, the king personally supervised the bodhisattva's rescue. With gentleness and reverence, the king ordered his most precious golden robe to be brought and draped over the bodhisattva's pain-racked body. Under the morning sun, the robe shimmered as if honoring the hero's nobility. Next, the king directed his attendants to gently lower the bodhisattva into the cool waters of the Ganges. The river water seemed to have healing powers, gradually washing away the wounds and soothing the bodhisattva's pain. The king himself offered him a bowl of pure sugar water, hoping it would help restore his depleted strength. With the meticulous care usually reserved for a king, the attendants dried the bodhisattva's body with the softest cloths. Then, they gently rubbed his skin with precious fragrant oil, refined 1,000 times, its sweet aroma permeating the air. Finally, the king ordered the preparation of a special couch. A precious animal skin, anointed with fragrant oil, was spread out like a bed for the bodhisattva. With utmost gentleness, they placed him on it so that he could rest and recover. In that moment, the king did something no king had ever done before. He voluntarily sat down in a position lower than the bodhisattva, showing deep respect for his sacrifice and nobility. The king's eyes were filled with admiration and gratitude, looking at the bodhisattva not as an animal, but as a teacher, an inspiration of selflessness and true leadership. In the quiet space of the ancient forest, the king and the bodhisattva, the noble monkey king, faced each other in a moment full of meaning. The king's eyes were brimming with admiration and curiosity, while the bodhisattva's eyes shone with boundless compassion and wisdom. The atmosphere around them seemed to stand still, waiting for the profound dialogue about to unfold. The king, with a warm and emotional voice, began to recite. His verses echoed in the space, as if to engrave this moment into eternity. "O noble being, your very body became a living bridge, spanning the chasm of peril. Through your great sacrifice, the entire monkey troop escaped the brink of death, finding their way to safety. I cannot help but wonder, O venerable monkey king, what is the relationship between you and that troop? Are they family, friends, or your subjects? Or perhaps are you an inseparable part of them?" The bodhisattva, though enduring extreme physical pain, maintained a calm and dignified demeanor. He looked deep into the king's eyes, as if conveying not just through words, but through his very soul. Then, with a voice warm and full of spiritual strength, he began his story. "Your Majesty, what you see before you is not merely a monkey. I am the Monkey King, the leader and protector of the entire troop. Each life in the troop is as precious to me as my own. When I saw the horror in their eyes, my heart was torn apart by pain and worry. Can your Majesty imagine? I had to use all my strength and will to jump across a distance that even the best archers would find difficult to shoot. 100 bow lengths. My body stretched like a bowstring, every muscle, every nerve directed towards a single goal. to save my troop. Having crossed that unimaginable distance, I quickly tied a bamboo pole to my body. Was it painful? Yes, but that pain was nothing compared to the thought of my troop being in danger. Then came the fateful moment. I aimed for the ancient tree on the other side of the chasm, standing tall like a moon amidst a storm. The furious wind roared around my ears, threatening to blow away my will, but I remained steadfast. Yet fate seemed to mock me as I could barely reach the treetop. But that was enough. I clung to the branch with all my remaining strength. And then, suspended between life and death, I became a living bridge for my troop. One by one, they walked across my back, each step a reminder of my responsibility and love for them. Was it painful? Immensely. But the joy of seeing them safe erased it all. Your Majesty should know, death does not frighten me. Even in captivity, I feel no sorrow, for my greatest happiness is to see my troop, the beings I have led and protected, safe and happy. And this, Your Majesty, is not just a story of courage or sacrifice. It is a lesson, a model for governing a country. Look at my monkey troop as if they were your subjects. Their happiness and peace must always be the top priority. From the most ordinary citizen to the mightiest warrior, from the smallest street to the grandest palace, all are an indispensable part of the kingdom. If you truly wish to rule a prosperous and peaceful country, treat each subject as a part of yourself. Be ready to sacrifice for them, protect them, and lead them with love and fairness. Only then will you truly be worthy of the throne and the reverence of all people. The Bodhisattva's words, though weak in volume, were powerful in meaning, seeming to echo through space and time. His voice, soft as a whisper of wind through leaves, carried the strength to move mountains. Each word, each syllable fell like precious pearls, settling deep within the king's soul. The king stood there, his eyes brimming with emotion, glistening like jewels in the evening sun. He felt a profound change taking place within his heart, as if a warm flame had been lit, dispelling all shadows of selfishness and ignorance. From that moment, he knew his life and his rule would never be the same. Every decision, every action from now on would be guided by the love and compassion the Bodhisattva had imparted. As the final words faded, the Bodhisattva gently closed his eyes, his last breath escaping like a whisper on the wind. His passing was as serene and peaceful as a gentle sunset after a long day of radiance. The king, his heart heavy with sorrow yet full of gratitude, knelt beside the Bodhisattva, his trembling hands softly touching the motionless form. After a long silence, the king stood up, his eyes resolute and determined. He called his ministers, his voice resonating with warmth and authority. "My lords, I decree that this noble monkey king shall receive a funeral befitting a sovereign. Prepare everything with the utmost reverence and grandeur." Then, turning to his concubines, who stood silently with tear-filled eyes, he gently said, "You shall escort the monkey king to the burial ground as his retinue. Wear robes of bright red, symbolizing his noble sacrifice. Let your long hair flow freely, as if mourning a fallen hero, and carry blazing torches in your hands, illuminating his final journey." The ministers, with profound respect, began preparations for the grand funeral. They gathered 100 cartloads of wood, each filled with the most fragrant and precious timber from across the kingdom. The funeral pyre was erected, reaching towards the sky like a giant lotus, ready to carry the Bodhisattva to eternity. After completing all the funeral rites befitting the greatest of kings, they carefully collected the Bodhisattva's bones. With utmost reverence, they brought his skull to the king. The king, with hands trembling with emotion, gently cradled the Bodhisattva's skull as if holding the most precious treasure in the world. With a solemn voice full of determination, the king commanded, "I wish to build a magnificent temple at the very site of the Bodhisattva's cremation. Make it a symbol of compassion and sacrifice, so that all who see it will remember the noble lesson he has bestowed upon us." When the temple was completed, the king personally performed the ritual of lighting torches and offering incense and flowers. The fragrant smoke rose, mingling with the shimmering light of thousands of candles, creating a scene of awe-inspiring beauty and solemnity. But the king did not stop there. With boundless reverence, he ordered the Bodhisattva's skull to be inlaid with gold, transforming it into a sacred relic. The skull was raised high on a spear, like a beacon of wisdom and compassion, illuminating the entire kingdom. It was placed prominently at the city gate, where all could pay homage and remember the great Bodhisattva. Whenever the king visited Benares, he would stop before this sacred relic, offering incense and flowers with utmost reverence. The entire capital, by royal decree, was adorned magnificently, as if celebrating a grand festival. For 7 consecutive days, people from all corners flocked to participate in the ceremony, honoring the Bodhisattva's relics. The atmosphere was solemn, yet filled with joy, as everyone gathered to remember and venerate the hero who had sacrificed himself for his troop. After receiving a portion of the relics and constructing a magnificent temple in the heart of the capital, the king frequently visited to offer incense and flowers. He never forgot the lesson the Bodhisattva had imparted. With each passing day, the king became more deeply imbued with his teachings, his heart growing more open and compassionate. The king began to dedicate himself to charity, helping the poor, building schools and hospitals. He performed countless good deeds, always placing the welfare of his subjects above all else. His rule became more just and benevolent, causing the kingdom to grow increasingly prosperous and peaceful. Thanks to his noble actions and pure heart, when his earthly life ended, the king was reborn in the celestial realm, where he continued to spread the love and compassion he had learned. As the story concluded, an extraordinary silence fell over the Jetavana monastery. The bhikkhus sat quietly, still immersed in the emotions and profound lessons of the tale. The Buddha, with compassionate eyes and a gentle smile, looked around at his disciples. He knew that the seeds of compassion and sacrifice had been sown in each of their hearts. With a voice deep and powerful, the Buddha proclaimed the noble truths, the sublime verities he had discovered on the path to enlightenment. Each of his words was like a ray of light, dispelling the darkness of ignorance in the hearts of his disciples. Finally, with eyes that seemed to pierce through time and space, the Buddha gently identified the birth. "O bhikkhus, you should know that. At that time, the king who was moved by the noble example of sacrifice was none other than Ananda, my closest and most devoted disciple now. The monkey troop, the beings saved by the sacrifice of the Monkey King, are the assembly sitting before me here. And the noble Monkey King, who did not hesitate to sacrifice himself to save his entire troop, was indeed a previous incarnation of myself." The Buddha's words resonated in the space, like an affirmation of the continuity of karma and boundless love throughout many lifetimes. The bhikkhus, their hearts filled with reverence and gratitude, bowed their heads to the teacher. They understood that their path of practice was still long, but with the Buddha's shining example, they would persevere, moving towards the ultimate goal of liberation. The story of the Bodhisattva as the Monkey King offers several profound Buddhist teachings. Here are some key lessons we can extract. 1. Impermanence, anicca. The tale illustrates the fleeting nature of all things. The mango tree, once a source of joy for the monkeys, becomes a potential threat. This reminds us that nothing in life is permanent, and attachment to temporary pleasures can lead to suffering. 2. Karma and cause and effect. The single mango that escaped the monkey's attention led to a chain of events, demonstrating the Buddhist principle of karma. Every action has consequences. This teaches us to be mindful of our actions, as even small deeds can have far-reaching effects. 3. Compassion, karuna, and wisdom, panna. The Bodhisattva's actions in protecting his tribe showcase the perfect blend of compassion and wisdom. His foresight in removing all mangoes demonstrates wisdom, while his concern for his tribe's safety illustrates compassion. This exemplifies the Buddhist ideal of balancing wisdom and compassion in our actions. Number 4. Non-attachment. The king's obsession with the mango and his journey to find its source represent attachment and craving, which Buddhism teaches as roots of suffering. The story invites us to reflect on our own attachments and the suffering they may cause. 5. Mindfulness, sati. The Bodhisattva's acute awareness of potential danger from the fallen mangoes demonstrates mindfulness. This teaches the importance of being present and aware in our daily lives, a key aspect of Buddhist practice. 6. Interdependence, pratityasamutpada. The interconnected events in the story, from the mango falling into the river to the king's journey, illustrate the Buddhist concept of dependent origination. It shows how all phenomena are interconnected and mutually dependent. 7. The middle way. The Bodhisattva's approach of removing all mangoes, even buds, represents a balanced approach, neither too lax nor too extreme. This mirrors the Buddha's teaching of the middle way, avoiding extremes in our practice and life. 8. Selflessness, anatta. The Bodhisattva's selfless act of protecting his tribe, even at potential risk to himself, embodies the Buddhist concept of non-self. It teaches us to act for the greater good, transcending our ego. 9. The Four Noble Truths. The story encapsulates elements of the Four Noble Truths. The king's craving for the mango represents the origin of suffering, second noble truth, while the Bodhisattva's wisdom in foreseeing and preventing danger illustrates the path to cessation of suffering, fourth noble truth. 10. Ethical conduct, sila. The Bodhisattva's leadership and protective actions demonstrate ethical behavior, a cornerstone of Buddhist practice. It shows how moral conduct can prevent suffering and promote harmony. Advice for applying these lessons in modern life. Practice mindfulness daily to become more aware of your thoughts, actions, and their potential consequences. Cultivate compassion and wisdom in your decisions, considering how your actions might affect others. Reflect on your attachments and how they might be causing suffering in your life. Practice letting go. Remember the principle of impermanence when facing both joys and sorrows, helping you maintain equanimity. Apply the middle way in your lifestyle choices, avoiding extremes in work, relationships, and personal habits. Act with selflessness in your community, considering the greater good in your decisions. Be mindful of the interconnectedness of all things, recognizing how your actions can have far-reaching effects. By integrating these teachings into our daily lives, we can cultivate greater peace, wisdom, and compassion, leading to a more fulfilling and harmonious existence. If you have learned profound lessons from this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful Buddhist stories on your journey to peace. Leave a comment below, sharing your thoughts on the lesson you like the most. How do you feel about the actions of the characters in the story? How would you apply these lessons to your life? Or if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please comment. We look forward to hearing from you. Wishing you peace and happiness.